Hello, hello, hello. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope you had an amazing Thanksgiving if you celebrated Thanksgiving. I was reading a quote this morning on Van Gogh, and it made me think of a lot of things. And so I thought, let's explore this quote and let's talk about some of the things that that it brought up, because it's really, really good. So this quote that I saw from Van Gogh was, as I work at my drawings day after day, what seemed unattainable before is now gradually becoming possible. Slowly, I'm learning to observe and measure. I don't stand quite so helpless before nature any longer. So that's Van Gogh. That's from the movie Lust for Life. So it probably has flavors of Van Gogh. But what I think is really interesting about it is just some of the things that we can kind of like learn from this, that even Van Gogh felt helpless in front of his subject. Even Van Gogh felt frustrated and was not progressing as fast as he might have wanted to. And what I was thinking about regarding this is just how much our expectations color the way that we experience our art making. And then also, what I think is more interesting is just the act of learning, the things that felt like they were too hard, too unattainable, too far away before becoming possible. And then before becoming possible for the artist, before reaching that skill set. And then I think also what is really fun to think about is how much our understanding changes, and how much that change in understanding changes the questions that we ask ourselves and we ask of our art. So the more that you learn about your subject, the more you draw, the more you explore color, the more that you play with shapes, the more nuanced your understanding is. And I think that curiosity, the feeling of curiosity, is kind of like Miracle-Gro for creativity. Do you guys remember that Miracle-Gro? For those of you who are in the United States, it was this like magic plant fertilizer that when you put it on your house plants, or you put it in your garden, then everything just like grew and bloomed, and it was like a miracle, right? So hence Miracle-Gro. But I think that that this idea of curiosity being sort of like that Miracle-Gro for creativity, these questions that we ask ourselves, like, I wonder what will happen if I try X, Y, or Z, like that puts us immediately into a state of curiosity, and it calls in curiosity into the studio. Or I wonder how the image will change if I add this shape over here. How does that affect the entire image? Or what happens to the luminosity if I change the surface of the canvas here? What if I add more texture? How does that impact the luminosity? Like, anything that we ask ourselves about our question is going to invite in curiosity and creativity. The more time that we spend being truly present with our art and with our creativity, the deeper our understanding of ourselves and who we are as an artist. So this is one of the things that I was thinking about with regard to that quote, is that as we get more and more curious, as we explore and as we discover and as we grow our skills, it just allows us to dive deeper and deeper and deeper into who we are as artists. But that requires patience. and it requires allowing ourselves to have that exploration and to not be sort of like this demanding taskmaster, to allow us to have this creativity, allow us to have that exploration without demanding perfection at the same time. It sort of cancels each other out. When we're just starting out, either as a painter, like if you're a new painter, or when you're just starting out with a new idea, a new painting, a new series, something that we haven't tried before or achieved before, the questions that we have at that time, at that very beginning stage, tend to be very basic and very surface level, because we haven't given ourselves the opportunity of diving deeper into this series or into this particular painting or into painting itself. So therefore, the questions that we have are really broad, surface level questions. But as we practice the idea, as we make attempts at creation, what happens is we gather more data about the subject. And then from that data, we create hypothesis about what action we need to take in order to reach the outcome we want. That's a really, really fancy way of saying we take an educated guess and then we try it and then we assess the results. So what this might look like is maybe an educated guess is, oh, you know what? I think I need to add red to my paint mix. So then you add the red and then you make a mark. Now you have new information to assess. I think one of the problems is that so many times artists will try to do all that in their head. They don't want to make a mistake. They don't want it to be wrong. They don't want to overwork the painting. So they either quickly try something without putting that thought process into it, or they try to figure it all out in their head and they just spin in an endless cycle because they don't have any data to work from. Now, when you are present and you approach the painting with genuine curiosity and add in a touch of self-confidence, which self-confidence means you trust your capacity to figure it out. If the color isn't if you have those three things, if you're present, you have genuine curiosity, and you bring in self-confidence for yourself, the artist who's there creating, if the color isn't creating the effect that you want, then what you're going to do when those three things are present is you will assess, and then maybe you'll try a different red. Okay. So maybe you, when you thought the first time, I need to add more red to this, you just grab your go-to, maybe that's cadmium red. And now that you have mixed that color, put it down, maybe you realize that cad red isn't actually the hue that works best in that spot with the rest of the painting. So then you mix up another color, and this time you add a touch of alizarin, or maybe you choose Perillian red. Now you're adding more information to your visual memory. Like, you're trying to get this color, yes, and you're also learning a little bit about the nuances between different red pigments. You're gathering more data. You are collecting more information. All of this goes into your artist memory bank back here. So now the next time your questions about your painting become a little bit more nuanced. This time, maybe my educated guess is that I should add more red. And the nuance in that is, okay, more red, which pigment of red might work best here? Oh, I remember the last time that I added cadmium and the result that I got was X. And you know what? That didn't work on the painting. That didn't get the result that I wanted in the painting I was working on at that time. But this is a new painting, and the context is different. The colors around it are different. Based on what I observed them, I think cad red and just a smidge of Perillian red will work here. more data, more nuances. So not only am I trying that, the cadmium red with a smidge of beryllium, I'm kind of just making this up, but now I am gathering even more data, more nuances of what it looks like when you mix those two pigments of red together. So if you contrast that whole thought process, that whole way of working with what happens when you are not present, when you are not curious, and when you are not approaching the canvas with self-confident, what happens is very, very different. All right. So when you are not present, your brain is occupied with other things. So you are missing that capacity. You have all this energy that is leaking out and going somewhere else. It's not going to your painting. Your brain is off on a tangent. Maybe it's replaying a conversation you had on the internet and it's drafting a better comeback while simultaneously writing endless variations of the reply to an email that you got last week, but you still haven't sent, right? So your brain is just spinning off, knocking your glasses off. It's just spinning off in all these different directions. And when you're not present and your brain is occupied with all these other things, with what's for dinner, with what's next on your calendar, with maybe you forgot something and drafting that email and coming up with a comeback, what happens then is the artist has left the building and the canvas is sitting there by itself, even if you're standing in front of it. If that's the case, if you're not present and you have that same situation, you probably don't even remember what colors you added to the pile up on your palette. And even if you did, you have very little access to your creative problem-solving brain because all of that energy is going towards all of those other things. So you have no capacity to figure this out. When you're not curious, not only do you not have the capacity to figure it out, you also don't have the data because you probably really don't remember like what is in that, what is on your palette, like how you mix those colors and what's already in there. When you're not curious, your brain sees that the color you mixed isn't getting the result that you want, and it will instantly go to thoughts like, you don't know what you're doing. This just isn't working. This painting sucks. That thinking is a dead end. That thinking without curiosity about your painting isn't going to lead you anywhere. It's not going to bring in creativity and it's not going to lead you to a solution to the problem. It's just going to kind of default to what I just call like comparing and blaming and things like all these things that our brain likes to do that is not helpful and not useful. So you don't wonder in that case what would get the result that you want. You stop at, your brain kind of stops at that thought of, see, that didn't work. Maybe I should paint something different. You're more likely to succumb to frustration or other feelings that just really don't help you because you have no curiosity about what's happening on your canvas. And then throw in the fact that maybe you're not present, and that's just like a recipe for not finishing the painting, not learning anything, not creating what it is that you wanted to create. And then that third thing, like when you're there and all of that's going on and you're not approaching the canvas with self-confidence, then that mark on the canvas serves as even more proof that you maybe bit off more than you could chew with this painting. It's sort of like an invitation for frustration and overwhelm and overpainting and jumping back on the internet to look for inspiration and then getting lost again in that conversation or that comment that you were thinking about before. Like if you don't approach the canvas with self-confidence, then you're not believing that you have the capacity to figure out this painting. So your brain finds a way to relieve the tension. It finds a way to prevent you from failing. And it does that most often by not letting you paint the painting, right? It just removes that. It's like, okay, that is going to lead to frustration and disappointment. So let's not do that. let's go just spin our wheels on Facebook because that's like an instant gratification kind of feeling. So these are some of the things that happen in our studio. And I think like what I was thinking about with a quote from Van Gogh, obviously it wasn't immediately like, let's talk about going on Facebook or going on Instagram. But what I think was so interesting about it is this understanding that, or this observation, I think is what it felt like to me that he had. Because when he says like, as I work at my drawings day after day, what seemed unattainable before is now gradually becoming possible. And this is something that all of our minds sort of kind of fall prey to when we are doing something challenging. It's difficult because we've never done it before. We don't have that sort of that confidence that comes from evidence of having done it before. We're relying completely on our own inner confidence. And when we're in that place and we're feeling like this is unattainable, so often what's happening is we're just not willing to feel the discomfort of not knowing how the painting is going to turn out, or of not knowing how we will create the painting or how we will resolve this, right? We're in that place of being uncertain. And so oftentimes that is something that when we're not paying attention, our brain will really try to avoid and pull us away from. Like human beings do not tend to like uncertainty. So that prevents us from doing the work that will give us the skill, that will give us the data, that will give us the knowledge that makes that easier and makes it more enjoyable. So what this kind of brought up for me is this idea of just learning to, not to sound overly cliche, but learning to enjoy the suck, learning to enjoy the parts that are hard, that are traditionally not fun, and not expecting it to be anything other than it is, and just understanding like, oh yeah, this is the part where I'm figuring this out and I'm learning this and I'm uncomfortable because my brain is telling me that I should know this. My brain is telling me that a talented artist or a better artist would know how to do this. And so I'm creating this sort of drama in my head, but reality is I'm just figuring this out. And I can either suffer through that or I can accept that I don't know what the answer is right now, but I do trust my capacity, self-confidence. I trust my capacity to figure it out. And I will keep trying and collecting data until I figure it out. So either way, it's going to be challenging, but we get to decide how challenging is it going to be? Is it going to be just the challenge of whatever this thing is that we're trying to solve? Is it just that? Or am I going to pile on all these other things and make it extra difficult by adding in judgment, by adding in all this criticism of myself, or adding in all these distractions and making it take longer and all of these other things? Or will I decide that, no, I understand that this is what I signed up for, and I'm going to be present. I'm going to approach this with 100% curiosity. I will find ways to be curious about what it is that I'm creating today. And I will embrace that and have fun with that exploration, knowing that what I do here on a daily basis is challenging. And that's why I do it. Because I know that I can handle that, because I know that I can experience those emotions and still paint and not make it mean anything else. All right. All that from a random Van Gogh quote, but I thought it was kind of fun to play with, and I thought it was kind of fun to talk about. So that is what I have for you all today. So good to see everyone here. Hello, hello, hello. I'm just kind of glancing through now. I'm like, oh, look, everybody's here. So that's what I have for you today. Think about that while you are kicking off your week. What other ways can you bring presence into your work? What other ways can you be there and make sure that the artist that creates the work is 100% there? How can you bring curiosity into your painting? What can you find about this challenge that you're working on that you can be curious about? And then how will you maintain a sense of self-confidence for you? For those of you who joined Creative Habits, who are in Growth Studio, these are things that we're talking about this week in Creative Habits. And in Growth Studio, we're talking about self-confidence and all the things about self-confidence. Super, super fun. If you're not in it, where are you going? What are you doing? Come join us. That's what I have for you today. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful week. Talk to you soon.